What's wrong, Daddy?
Baby. God.
Look at this shit.
Okay. Mommy likes to play games with Daddy. Mommy, have you ever noticed anything odd about Mr. Fuzzy Bear over there? His eyes seem to be a little bit odd, don't they? Yeah, there's something a little bit different about his eyes. Yes, I think it's true. Say hi, Mommy. Say hi to Rocco and Rocco. Say hi. Hi, fellas. See that, huh?
Hi there, bad scientist and evil genius. Welcome to Project Mania. It's where you come to learn new stuff and do crazy projects. But before we start, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss any future projects. Let's get to it. So this is a baby's bedroom and that is a baby monitoring system. In the eyes of Mr. Fuzzy Bear here, there is a tiny camera hidden inside very cleverly. Mr. Fuzzy Bear streams live video to the other room, where the guards can keep an eye on the baby, all the time, all day. It's gotta be boring, but at least they got their eyes on something else for once. Margot Robbie's I love you, Margot. There may be a couple of ways to go about doing this, but today I'm going to show you how to do it with just Wi-Fi and a Raspberry Pi. If you're lucky enough to have a good internet connection, you'll be able to access Mr. Fuzzy Bear from anywhere on the planet. But if not, it's okay. Don't quit this project yet. I'll show you how to do it on a local network. Sounds great? Great! So the plan here is to use any device capable of Wi-Fi and that has a web browser to connect to our network so we can stream video from the Raspberry Pi over this network. We will have all the hardware stuffed and hidden inside this door. This is the Raspberry Pi. It's a very powerful single board computer. This particular model is the Raspberry Pi 3B+. It has a 32-bit processor and 1 GB of RAM, which makes it more than capable for this project. It can do almost everything a full-on desktop computer can do. Just hook up a keyboard, a mouse, and a screen of some type, and you're good to go. It sips electrical power at 5 volts through its mini USB port. For this project, you'll need a supply of no less than 2 ampere because the streaming eats up a lot of juice. If underpowered, the Raspberry Pi just stops streaming. It doesn't turn off, but it doesn't stream either. This port is a port dedicated for a special camera which was designed specifically for the Raspberry Pi. We're gonna use it today, so more on it later. The software we need for this project is called Motion iOS. And once we acquire it, it has to be flashed into the microSD card of the Raspberry Pi. Motion iOS is a Linux distribution that turns any single board computer into a video surveillance system. It was developed by Colin Cretan and it's available on his GitHub account for free. It's an open source software, so you can take it and modify it as you see fit. So just go to your browser and type Motion iOS. Click on the first search result that appears and that will take you directly to Cretan's GitHub page. This is the page. First make sure you're on the code tab, then scroll down a little bit and click on releases. This is where we will download the image. Scroll down until you get to assets, where you will find that Motion I is available for many single board computers. Mine is a Raspberry Pi 3, so I'm gonna click on that and download it. But if you have a different board, download the right one for you. Once we have Motion I OS downloaded, we are going to need to flash it to our SD card, and for that we need a small software tool called Win32 Disk Imager. Just Google it and you can download it for free. There are many others like it out there, you can use any one you like. Okay, once it's done downloading, install it on your PC so we can move on to the next step. Take the SD card out from the Raspberry Pi and use a microSD to USB adapter like this one and put it into your PC. Okay, now fire up Win32 Disk Imager. Once you launch it, go ahead and browse the location of MotionEye image. When you download MotionEye OS, it will be in a zip file of about 50 megabytes, so make sure you unzip it first. The file extension should be .img. You also need to select the USB device we want to flash the image to, so go to your computer and find out the appropriate drive letter. Then click on write and give it a couple of minutes to flash. Now, let's talk about the camera, which are going to be the eyes of Mr. Fuzzy Bear. You can use a USB webcam, it's possible, but it's much better to use the Raspberry Pi camera, which was specifically designed for the Raspberry Pi. So I went online and got myself 2 of them. You can get them for very cheap, easily. It comes in a box like this. It's inside a plastic anti-static bag because the camera is sensitive to static electricity. Be careful with it, make sure you recharge yourself and be grounded first. It is an 8 megapixel camera with 1080p video, decent quality, which is more than enough for this project. Now let's talk about how we are going to power Mr. Fuzzy Bear. A power bank with high capacity is the best choice, obviously, because we do not want a power cord hanging from behind the door. But the power bank should be of some high capacity so that Mr. Fuzzy Bear will stream video for a long time on a single charge. We want Mr. Fuzzy Bear to be completely wireless. That's why we're going to use my Android phone's hotspot for our network. But nevertheless, we'll need a wired network for the initial setup before we can make it wireless. I'm gonna use this old D-Link I have at home, but you can use any router you have. So take your RJ45 network cable and hook one end of it to the router and the other end of it to the Raspberry Pi. We'll need another network cable to connect our PC to the router. Okay, now we are done with the hardware setup. Next thing to do is the software configuration. To access MotionEye OS and use it, we need its IP address, which is currently assigned to it by the router. There are 2 ways with which we can find this IP address, and I'm going to show you both of them now. The first way to do it is by connecting a screen to the Raspberry Pi. Any kind of display that has an HDMI port can be used. I'm using my Samsung TV, so you can use your TV too if you have one laying around. Once you have your display connected and your Raspberry Pi powered up, wait for Motion Eye to boot. Might take a minute or two, so be patient. Okay, now it has booted successfully and you can see a lot of things on the screen. The number we need is this one. It's the IP address assigned to it by the router. Keep this number with you now. You'll need it in a moment. The second way with which we can find the IP address is from the admin page of the router. In order to access the admin page of the router, we need its default gateway. This is usually printed on the back of the router itself, but if you don't find it there, just Google it. You can find it on Google. Here in the admin page of your router, you will need to go to device information and then from the drop down, click on the HCP. There is going to be a list of devices which are connected to this network. You can take the IP address from here, just copy it and we'll use it later. The admin page of every router is not the same, so this last step won't necessarily be the same for you if you have a different router, but it will be something similar. Just look through all the menus and available settings and you'll find your IP address. Once you find your IP address, take that number and put it into your browser. This will open up Motion Eye setup page. The box, Motion Eye comes with username admin and no password. You'll have to set a proper username and password yourself to make your streaming secure. So we're in and it says here you have not configured any camera yet. Click here to add. So we just click there and an option comes for setting up a camera. Leave the camera type as it is, but then change the camera to the last option. That's the Raspberry Pi camera we connected earlier in this video. Yay! The setup is clearly working and we are almost there. Great! But as you can see, the resolution is very low and the frame per second is low too. That's why the sluggish video. Therefore, we'll have to fiddle with the settings a little bit to fix this. Click on the settings icon. This will take you to the settings where there are a lot of things you can change and tune to get your optimum setup. Play around with it, you won't break it, and if you don't like what you got by changing the setup, you can always restore it to the original settings and changing it back to how it was. But for now, we'll only change the FPS and resolution of the video. Change the resolution of the video to a higher value, but not very high because we have a bandwidth limitation with the Raspberry Pi. Try a couple of the resolutions until you get one which is not so bad. And change the frame per second to about 25 FPS or higher. This will give us a not so bad video streaming, which is more than enough for this project. After all that, we need to click on apply so that these test settings are saved. Okay, now let's check our feed and it looks great. Hooray! We need to make Mr. Fazbear wireless, so there is another part of this settings we need to tweak. Get back to settings and find network settings. Switch on wireless network, and once you do that, add the name and password of the wireless access point you're going to use. I'm gonna use my Android phone's hotspot, so I will add the name and password of my hotspot to the network settings. Then just click on apply, and it will require you to reboot your Motion Eye. The next time it boots, it will automatically connect to the hotspot of my phone and operate wirelessly without a router and without any cables. Motion Eye has successfully booted, and it has already connected itself to the phone's hotspot, and obviously a new IP address has been assigned to it by the phone. We need this new IP address, so keep it with you. Now we are done with the software configuration, and we don't need the router in the PC anymore, so we are left with just only this hardware, which is neat and nice. We can stuff it inside your door easily.